The greedy couple. The sun beat down on the parched earth, baking the dry soil and withered crops. The villagers and community were struggling to survive in the land of Ako Kingdom, their crops dying and their water supplies dwindling. Mr. and Mrs. Eze, the young couple, devised an alternative to source for water. Instead of helping their neighbors, saw it as an opportunity to profit from their suffering. They began to hoard water in large containers, buying it up from the few villagers who still had access to it and selling it to the desperate at exorbitant prices. They laughed and gloated as they counted their profits, their hearts hardened by their greed. One day, a wise old woman related to Mrs. Eze maternally came to visit. She saw the suffering of the people and the greed of Mr. and Mrs. Eze. She knew that something has to be done. She called the couple and said, "I will give you all the water you need, but only if you agree to share with the rest of the village." The couple, thinking they could outsmart the old woman, agreed to her terms. But as soon as they had all the water they needed, they reneged on their promise. They refused to share it with anyone, and the villagers were left to suffer even more. The old woman, seeing their treachery, cursed the water, saying, "From this day forward, the water you hoard will turn to dust and ashes in your hands." And so it was. The water in their containers began to dry up, turning to dust and ashes before their very eyes. At first, they laughed and scoffed at the old woman's curse. But as the days passed and their water supplies dwindled, they began to realize the gravity of their mistake. They tried to use water to irrigate their crops, but it was like trying to water the plants with sand. The crops withered and died, and the Ezes were left with nothing. The villagers who had once been their friends and neighbors shunned them. They would not even speak to the couple. So great was their anger and disgust. And the Ezes were left alone, their greed and selfishness having destroyed everything they once had. As the drought worsened, the couple grew more and more desperate. They tried to find water anywhere they could, but it was scarce and expensive. They were forced to drink from the dusty riverbed, their thirst and hunger driving them to desperation. One day, as they were walking through the dry and barren landscape, they came across a small spring. It was the only source of water for miles around, and Mr. and Mrs. Eze knew they had to have it. They tried to take it by force, but the villagers who had been watching them with suspicion drove them off. In the end, Mr. and Mrs. Eze were left with nothing. No water, no crops, no friends. They were alone in the desert, their greed and selfishness having destroyed everything they once had, and they knew that they had brought it all on themselves. The moral of the story: greed and selfishness can lead to destruction and isolation. It is important to share our blessings with others and to be mindful of the consequences of our actions. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. See you in my next one. Bye.